Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. This is going to be a episode that's actually number 50 and 51, back 400 and some episodes ago on the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. And with elk season coming up, I thought I would combine 50 and 51. And it's Craig Steele with Exclusive Pursuit Outfitters and I talking about field judging elk. And it's a very popular episode. I thought with elk season coming up here, I would combine those two episodes together and let you guys listen to this. For those new listeners, maybe you haven't gone back and listened to this, so I think you'll find some great value. I want to thank Craig Steele for coming on and doing this with me. Guys, as always, I really appreciate all of the support that I get from you, whether it be emails or direct messages on Instagram, you guys telling me how much you enjoy the podcast, how much value you get out of the podcast. And I love hearing from you guys, as well as any of the hunts that you've got coming up this fall. Please let me know how you do. I love to interact with you guys, the listeners. I want to thank the sponsors of this podcast. I want to remind you guys that the Go Hunt Insider is doing a free 30-day trial. It's completely free. So all you got to do is go to gohunt.com/jscott and follow the prompts. And you can check out all of the Western states. You can check out all of the draw odds data, all of the harvest statistics, all of the strategy articles. It's free. Guys, what do you have to lose? It's a free trial. Go to gohunt.com/jscott and take advantage of that free 30-day trial. I also like to thank Kuyu Ultralight Hunting, Jason Hairston and his crew. Jason is actually up in the Yukon right now on his Dall sheep hunt, and I can't wait to see how he does. I just got some more Kuyu stuff in the mail the other day for my Dall sheep hunt that I've got coming up with Lance Kronberger in the Chugach of Alaska, and I'm going to be breaking down the gear differences that I'm taking between the Northwest Territories and the Chugach, so be on the lookout for that. I want to thank Kuyu Ultralight Hunting for their sponsorship. Make sure to go to Kuyu, that's KUIU.com, and check out all of their great gear. Also, Canyon Coolers, guys. Use the J. Scott promo code. You're going to get a 10% discount there at canyoncoolers.com. I want to thank them for their sponsorship. And they have an unbelievable warranty there at Canyon Coolers. If you break the cooler or you injure the cooler or you harm the cooler in any way, doesn't matter if it's your fault, doesn't matter if it falls off the truck, doesn't matter if you're the original owner. All you got to do is take a picture of it, send it to them. They will either repair it or they will replace it. That is an unbelievable warranty. No other cooler company out there is doing that. I also want to thank the Outdoorsman's 1-800-291-8065. If you use the J. Scott promo code, you're going to get a 10% discount on all Outdoorsman's products. Guys, let's get right to this episode. Thanks for your support. Come find me on Instagram at JScottOutdoors if you don't already follow, and look forward to hearing from you guys.
We're going to talk about field judging elk today in this episode, and we're probably not going to be able to cover all of the intricate details of field judging elk, but if you do go to jscottoutdoors.com, you go to my website, on the right-hand side, if you scroll down, you can actually go down to where it says labels, and if you go down to the F's for field judging elk, there's actually 35 posts that I've done on field judging elk, and there's a lot of videos, there's a lot of pictures, there's a lot of diagrams, and pretty intricate, detailed information on field judging elk. And
let's hold up. If you guys listening, if you guys haven't been to Jay's blog, and he's being very gracious in how he says that, it's the best information that's out there as far as field judging. And I'm not going to pull any punches here. What I know of Jay, and one of the things that everybody talks about that's around me is Jay's field judging with regards to desert bighorn sheep and elk hunting. He provides huge value to anybody that wants to get better. That's one of the things that have always drawn me to you as a person. you got images, you got videos, you got articles that you wrote for Elk Hunter and Western Hunter included in here, but it's the total deal, and it really, if you're wanting to get better at field judging and you need to look at pictures, you need to look at video, you need to, outside of actually doing it and having the experiences of doing it over and over again, this is the best thing to learn for that guy that doesn't, get an archery elk tag every year and doesn't get time to spend in the woods every year. It helps. And I know there's a lot of guides out there, they won't admit it, but there's a lot of guides out there that look at this stuff and Jay gives them value as well. So.
Well, I appreciate that. One of the things, over the years, I have received a few negative criticisms of someone that only is about score and only is about the numbers. And my response to a lot of that is, well, you really don't know me. What you see on my blog as detailed and, as thorough as I try and be, I'm that same way when I've got my own tag or if I'm guiding. But this field judging and scoring stuff basically stemmed from me wanting to learn, and most importantly, in all of my hunting and guiding, I want to be accurate. And I'm not a fan of fish stories. While I like hearing fish stories, I don't like hearing, this fish was, this big and some guy's arms are as wide as, 45-inch trout. I'm one that likes to say, no, it was really 16. It goes the same way into my hunting with the coos deer and the mule deer and the sheep and the elk and such, where, I want to know what that animal scores so that when I'm trying to evaluate for my own tag or for someone that I'm guiding, I can be as close and as accurate as I can. So, am I a numbers guy? Yes. Do I feel that numbers and scoring is that why I hunt? Absolutely not. But I'm of the opinion that I want to be as accurate as possible. I don't want to make mistakes. And do I make mistakes? Every day. Do I misjudge animals? All the time. But I have learned a lot by providing a lot of these resources and diving into the numbers. When Dara and I are looking at an animal, we go back and forth and bounce back and forth with each other, Dara, my guiding partner, and, sometimes he's right, sometimes I'm right. Sometimes we're both wrong. But I feel like as analytical as you can get, it just makes you better.
Absolutely, it does. And, anybody that, my thoughts on trophy hunting and admitting that I'm a trophy hunter and that this stuff absolutely makes you better. And anybody that puts in for an antlered species or a horned species, I think you're a trophy hunter. I don't care how you cut it, how you say it. I'm not talking about the trophy hunter that just cuts the head off and leaves all the meat. I'm talking about you desire antlers. You desire horns. To what degree, we can all have arguments on that.
And big ones.
And big ones. If you have, I always use the analogy, if there's a 30-inch buck, mule deer, and a 2-point standing next to each other, and you elect to shoot the 30-inch buck, you cannot argue that you're not a trophy hunter. To what degree, we can argue all day long. But regardless of that, we're talking about field judging elk and getting better and trying to be as accurate as we can. I think one of the things that that I've really learned from you is in the guiding world is making sure you're credible. And it's one thing. It's disappointing when it's your own hunt if you misjudge an animal. Not because that's the only thing you hunt for, but just because, again, you want to be accurate. It's another.
Well, and you're setting a benchmark.
It's another, yes. It's another aspect of the score. It's another thing when you do it for a paying client, somebody that's doesn't maybe have the knowledge or the time, and they say, hey, I'd like to kill a 350, or I'd like to kill a 380, or I'd like to kill a 300. You want to do right by them. you want to make sure you want to feel good that you're doing your job. You know, it's no different than a contractor building a house or whatever else. You just want to make sure you do your job. And one of the things that I've found that it seems like, you know, and we getting a little off topic, but with judging and a lot of people that just clients or even just hunters out there that talk about 400 inch, 370, 380, 350, they really don't realize, and we're going to get into that, about there's only small differences that really add up to those different type of bulls within, you know, measuring a bull. There really only is small differences, and that, you know, I've always been like, oh, why, you know, I don't really have to get my animals scored or whatnot. But it is, after I've seen the way stuff is marketed in the guiding world, and just the everyday Joe Blow saying this is a 400 inch, I think our numbers are really inflated high, and and we want to be accurate, you know. And
yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. To me, credibility is absolutely paramount. It's number one. I don't ever want to be known as someone that is not credible, and that has made me dive into field judging and trying to be accurate.
yes.
And since we're on that topic, I'm going to throw this out there that, you know, the fish stories and the inflated numbers and the unofficial, non-official, official scores,
Yeah.
it's got to stop. I mean, from across all aspects of hunting, in my opinion, there's nothing that makes me more sick than looking at 180-inch deer and having someone write 199 and 2/8 when you know that it's not even close. So, you know, am I calling out the guiding world and industry? Maybe. But the reality is we're all hunters. But let's just be accurate, guys. If you get an animal officially scored, then be happy with the official score, even if it's not as high as the score that you thought it was. Don't go searching out other official scores and, you know, have it scored 6 or 7 times until you get the score you like. These systems are put in place, Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young and SEI scores, although I think there's a big variance in some of them. If you take your animals to someone and one person always scores your animals, why would you take an animal to someone else just to get a higher score? We're kind of gotten off topic, but the point is credibility, and just whatever it is, call it what it is. And that's what led me to...
You remember when a 350 bull was cool? You remember that?
I do.
And it's still big, you know.
But I just, you know, if it's 352, it's 352. Don't call it 360.
Yeah.
If it's 110-inch coos, don't call it 116. Just call it what it is.
Yeah.
Because we all, as hunters, use these scoring systems, and we see a picture on Facebook or on Instagram, and it says 199, or it says, you know, 404. Well, it would be nice if people were accurate. Then it would be educational to go, oh, that one's 404 and that one's 360. But when some of these photos are off by 20 inches or 30 inches, you know, you're really misleading, and
that's the thing. You can't for, you know, taking this into the field judging topic, you can't accurately get better off of field judging or trying to educate yourself off dead photos, because there's too many different lenses, there's too many different angles and body sizes. And so if you're trying to, you know, what you're saying is when somebody puts a photo up there, you know, that says it's a 210-inch buck and it's really, you know, a 185-inch buck, you can't. That's my dog.
I was gonna say it sounded like a cat fight or a dog fight in your.
She's wanting to play this morning, man. I'm the only one here, and she's wanting to play with me. She's only 8 months old, but anyway, you can't, if you're listening, don't even look at those images to try to get better at field judging. And I would take, unless there's an official score sheet myself, I would take every score with a grain of salt, because it just is what it is. Guides have learned that, to market scores and inflate numbers and that's why a lot of times with exclusive pursuit outfitters, with our marketing stuff, we don't even put scores. If we do get an official score, we'll blog about it, maybe post it up. If somebody asks, then we'll say, but we just let the animal speak for itself, and go from there. But, let's try to get back on field judging, because you and I will ramble about this all day.
Yeah. So, does Cujo need a bone or what?
Oh, she is. Yeah, one second. Time out. She's using let me feed her.
Okay, Craig, so getting into field judging elk, we've already talked about, listeners can go on jscottoutdoors.com, go down to the lower right, click on field judging elk, all 35 posts will come up, and there's a lot of details there. I want to talk about a few things, and one of them is first impressions. To me, if I'm up on a hill glassing through my binoculars or spotting scope, or in the field calling a bull, and a bull comes in, or I first see a bull, first impressions to me mean a lot. And one of the things that I like to do is I try and take the emotion out of it. If it's my tag and, I'm excited, it's hard for me, but I try and take the emotion out of it. And what I try and do is immediately look for weaknesses. So I've trained myself, when I glass up a bull, I'm trying to size up what are his weaknesses. I'm looking at his body size. I'm trying to age him, and maybe not specifically, he's a 5-year-old or he's a 6-year-old, but I'm trying to say, is his body mature? Is he a young bull or is he an old bull? Because a lot of times the young bulls can look big at first impressions, and then you realize that maybe they're, 150, 200 pounds smaller than a big old mature bull. So I'm looking, and very first things are I'm trying to say, what is this bull? And then I start looking, okay, is he a 6 point? And, most of the time I look for the 4th point and then look where the main beam, usually on most elk, kind of gives that curve and creates that whale tail. So you've got your 4th and your 5th. And for me, I like big backs. I like big backs on bulls. And isn't there a song?
There is a song.
I like big backs.
It's not big backs. I like big butts. They're mixed a lot.
But that's what my first impression is, okay, and then I start trying to categorize the bull. Is this a 300 bull? Is this a 330 bull? Is this a 350 bull? I don't know what you do, but that's what I do. When I first see an elk, I try and categorize it, get kind of an idea of age class of what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I try to. It all depends on time. If we're talking about scouting and getting up and glassing or seeing a bull, I obviously if it's quick and whatnot, it's going to be all air judging. It's going to be 300, 350, 370 to 380, 400. Very rarely do I throw that ever out there. But it really, for me, it depends on time. First off, how I'm going to go about breaking down a bull, and if I'm setting up glassing for bulls, and I see something that just sticks out, whether I'm combing and then I catch a bull and he's got some characteristics or his frame. I look at his frame, I guess, width and length. of the main beams first, and then I'm attracted to mass. Big back ends always draw my eyes, and it depends on time. If he's something that looks really big that I need to stare at for a little while longer with the glass, then I do. If he's something that I really can't tell or whatnot, or if it's early in the glassing period, I might just note him, try to see if tree wise, is he going to get in the trees on me before I can get a look or get video or pictures of him, and then go on and continue glassing, because I want to for lack of a better term, savor the moment and glass as many bulls as I can that morning from that point, or looking up, or however I may be doing it while they're out in the open.
And what you mean by that is you're classifying and categorizing bulls, trying to do it as quickly as possible, because in the mornings and in the evenings, a lot of times you only have a short period of time before they get out of the opens into the trees where you can't analyze them and look at them enough. I think what we've been talking about here, first impressions and what have you, is kind of the air judging method of scoring. And honestly, I think a lot of people use air judging, and they'll see a bull for 10 seconds and they'll say that was a 350 bull.
Yep.
Well, what they're doing is they're air judging, and they're kind of throwing it into a class or category. I think and I do that all the time, you do that all the time, but I think the other methods of scoring become more precise.
Yes.
But I think it's important to become fairly accurate at air judging and being able to quickly categorize. And I think, we talked about this morning before we were on the air, one of your favorite things to categorize is digiscoping.
Yeah.
And I can remember, the first digiscoping that I did was holding my little point and shoot camera up to my binoculars that were on my tripod, or up to my spotting scope, just trying to capture an image of that animal. And how that has evolved over some time and some years is now we have incredible digiscoping adapters. The Outdoorsman's makes a real easy one for your iPhone, with great adapters for either binoculars or spotting scopes. And then, I use the Swarovski Optic TLS APO adapter, and it's actually allowed us as hunters to get professional quality images. Maybe not images you would sell, but certainly be able to elevate our field judging. When Dara and I started really capturing digiscoping images, our scoring and field judging went up, significantly because of this. We could bring the photo or the video back, and each of us analyze it and look at it. And maybe what my first impression was, Dara's first impression would be something totally different, or Jay, you're a little off, or I think you're high, or you're low.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important for people to get good at air judging. I think it's important for people to categorize bulls, but I think it's also important that to come back with a image, a video image, a photo image, where they can email it to friends of theirs, or even if they just want to look at it themselves, they can go, well, I didn't realize he didn't even have third points, or they're only 3 inches long. When a bull's got, big back end, your air judges is like, oh, that's a 350 bull. And then when you look at the image later, when you take the emotion out of it, you go, oh, I didn't realize he's got short, stubby fronts that, point straight out.
Yeah, if, obviously air judging is what, we all use. And getting accurate at that is critical to it's more of a time saver. You have to do it quickly, and you want to be accurate. Going to the digiscoping stuff, I think there's a lot of people out there, they don't get it. Like, they don't get that to me, field judging any species, that if I don't have pictures or video, I do not feel comfortable. I don't. And I do not feel comfortable with everything that I see, because sometimes I get amped up, or a lot of times I'm just gonna, when I glass something up, I'm like, oh, that's a big son of a gun, and I talk myself down. Same thing you're talking about. You talk yourself down. You start looking at them. Seeing them in the field is number one, but the actual, in my mind, the new number one is seeing them in the field, having video and images to where you can come back out of that environment and you have Google, you have J. Scott Outdoors, you have Orca, you have, all these different, you have all these different images and videos that you can go over, not to mention all your stuff that you have. You have buddies. Be careful who you send it to. But you can really analyze it. And you and I have gone through this where, you either didn't think an animal was that big, or I didn't think an animal impressed us. The one that actually looks at the animal in the field and looks at the video is the one, and has the most experience, is the one that I'm going to lean towards that opinion. Their opinion holding the most weight, because sometimes angles and cameras, and depending on how close you are, how much vignetting's in the image, distance, time of day can really change things. Not as much with elk, but definitely with other species it does.
Yeah, and not only that, I mean, body placement. Is the animal, walking away from you? Is he walking towards you?
Yes.
One of the things that Dara and I like to, ever since we started Digiscoping, even when it was just holding the camera and getting, moving, not very good video, but we would always try and get a image. And we'd talk to each other. Did you get it on video? Did you get a picture? Yes, I did. No, I didn't. I mean, just getting some image so you could re-verify what your error judge, what your initial first impression was, is so important. And I think that's, really, really helped me become a better field judger. And I think another thing that's helped me is I love to score antlers that I find, or I'm constantly, I always have, I don't always, during hunting season when I'm in elk camp or whatever, I usually always have a tape in my pocket. Critics would say, oh, you're all about score. No, I'm all about becoming accurate.
Yep.
And I like to put a tape on. If I come across an antler, I tape it.
Yep.
Why? Because I'm training myself to know what a 16-inch brow tine looks like, to know what a 20-inch fourth point looks like, to know what a 52-inch main beam is. And the more antlers that you can put your hands on and score, the better you will become at field judging. I think it's a huge part of my success of being accurate and getting better each day at being accurate is measuring antlers.
I mean, there's a lot of people that call out numbers all the time they don't even know if a 13-inch G1 is good or if a 23-inch G1 is good, and they just air judge and call it out there. I think most of the people that are probably listening, have some sort of sense of what is a good G1 or what is a good G2, what does that area typically holds. I think that's what you're getting at is, and I'm the same way with, I love the tape things. I know Boone and Crockett has, I know they do for antelope. I think they do for elk. They have, the average in a breakdown. They have the average of a Boone and Crockett entry level animal, what the average time length is or mass measurements is, and that's a good basis to start from,
And speaking of that, Craig, I had done an article for Elk Hunter magazine, and I broke down some average measurements. So they're examples based on a standard 6x6 frame, and you can find this chart on my website on, July 11th, 2012. there is a chart, and for those of you out there listening, this is based on an average 6x6 frame. A 300 to 310 bull, average inside spread. Now this is just a rough kind of chart, 35 inches. Main beam length per side, 45 inches. Mass per side, 25 inches. Point length per point, 13. Point length per side, 65. Gives you a total of a 305 bull. A 320 to 330 bull, inside spread is 37 inches. Main beam length per side is 47. Mass per side is 27. Point length per point, 14 inches. Point length per side is 70 inches. Total 325 bull. Now, one thing that I need to point out is these are just averages. This is just a chart that you could take with you. And if you're looking at a bull and you've scored some elk antlers and you say, oh, he's got 14-inch points, you can look down at your chart and say per point length, 14-inch, he's probably in the 325 range. Well, if he has extra short main beams or extra long main beams, or he's heavy or he's thin, maybe it's, one way or another, but this is a good chart to use. And I think by pointing out this chart, one thing I need to mention, in my mind, the most important thing when finding a high-scoring bull is tine length. Mm-hmm. Tine length makes up about 45% of your score. Main beam makes up about 28% of your score, mass 16, and spread is 11. So when I'm field judging an elk and I'm looking for big elk, the first thing that I'm looking for is long points, because very rarely can you have a high-scoring bull that doesn't have long points. There are a few exceptions to the rule, but long points and long main beams usually equal a big bull. Mm-hmm. People talk about a spread of a mule deer or a spread of an elk. Spread on an elk is not a big percentage of your score. Now, that can be deceiving because you can look at a bull and think he's a 350 bull, and usually a 350 bull, if you're looking at average spread, you're about 38 inches, but let's say he's a 50-inch bull, that's 12 inches, so you're now looking at a 362 bull. So with point length, main beam, mass, and spread, the one thing I will say is you've got to watch those real wide bulls, because they will have your average point length that for a 350 type bull, but you've got to watch those wide bulls, because they can actually jump you into a whole nother category before you even know it.
Yeah, my wife loves wide bulls. I'm sitting here looking at this bull that Dar's hunter killed with, speaking of long tines, I think he went 401 gross.
That's the typical bull, 6x6, Tim Allen's bull,
yes,
I would.
Yes, Tim Allen's bull. And I'm looking at that bull, and I'm just going to call out air judging right now. I'm looking at that bull, and when I look at this bull, I do not see 401 air judging. I do not see 401 air judging. I don't know how you, and a lot of guys, I think too, I know for me, I like bulls that turn down on their main beams. And those type of bulls, for me personally, it just depends. If I see a bull like that, if he's 380 and there's a bull that's 400 inches, it depends on what I want to shoot. But a bull that his beams turned down really hard in the back, it's going to be really hard for me personally to pass. So looking at Tim Allen's bull, I look at it just air judging.
And by the way, that's on the June 11th or July 11th, 2012 post. For those of you that are listening that want to also log on and check out what Craig's talking about, go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, and you just look at this bull, and his left side turns up, and his right side just is kind of lazy. I call those kind of lazy beams. They don't really do a whole lot. His right side turns down a little bit. But then, I'm sure you get to looking at this bull's, his fronts, his G1s and G2s, his bez and brows, some people call them. You start adding up the inches. He's not overly wide. He's got a lot of curve to his top end that makes his top end, in my opinion, doesn't really show how big his top end actually is, because it kind of curves in. So the angle, versus a bull that his back end, his points come straight off his horn, they look bigger. His curvature and how it lays in, to me, makes him look deceiving. And it's just, and I was reading this and thinking about this bull and seeing this bull, and when I first air judged him, I was thinking, oh man, that's a 370 bull, and it just goes to show you, I was off by 30 inches,
Yeah, and I think even Dar would say, he knew it was a big bull, but one of the things that blew them away was the body size. Dar said it had a giant body, and I think when you're making your first impression, body size, if he's standing in a field with 5 or 6 other bulls, and he's a Goliath, he's a giant bull, then you have to realize that his antlers are actually going to look smaller on his head than if that was over on the 5-year-old bull that's a young bodied, sleek kind of neck, sleek down, bull kind of starting to get into his starting into his prime. This set of antlers is going to look gigantic on a smaller body. I think, speaking specifically about Tim Allen's bull, I was not there. I was over in Unit 23. Dar was in Unit 10. The main beams on this bull are dang near 60 inches.
Yeah.
And that brings up the point of point length is number one. If you take all the big bulls, typically long points is number one, main beams is number two. But if you have extra long main beams, that can throw you off a little bit, or extra short main beams.
Big time. Big time.
I remember Michael Park's bull that same year in 2009, scored 435, and off of memory, his beams, I want to say, were only 53 inches, 52, 53 inches, but he had tons of point length. Or even like Mike Gallo's giant bull that Jay and Chad and the A3 guys, they're probably 475 inch bull. I want to say his beams weren't even 50 inches, but he had points galore.
Mm-hmm.
So long points, and while we're talking about that, extra points. Points in my book, when field judging, are everything. Point length is the single most important ingredient for a bull to score high. If you have an abnormal point, an extra point, you're just adding inches in your point length category. So if you're looking at a 6x6 bull or a 7x7 bull or an 8x8, every time you get more than the standard 6-point frame, a 7x7, even if his G6s are only 8 inches long and they look short on the frame, that's 16 inches of extra that you get to throw in your point length category. And so, speaking in general, extra points mean a lot.
Yeah, I typically, and you can answer this question, but when I field judge, specific, unless you just have a ton of time, I'll try to net a bull out, but most of the time, especially if it's in the field, let's say on a hunt, my dog just opened my door. When it's on an actual hunt, let's say a hunt scenario, I'm not factoring in the net score. I'm adding up what I can add up and trying to get the gross score. Because you start factoring in, 2 inches here, 3 inches there, and so with extra tines, I like, personally, I don't care. anytime a bull breaks, 380, he's a giant. But if he breaks 400 with extra points, then that's all fine and dandy. It just depends, a lot of times with what the hunter wants as well. But most of the time, you don't have the time to actually net a bull up. Would you, in a hunting scenario, would you say that true?
I agree. I mean, when you're netting a bull up, that's when you're using your digiscoping photos and images and video to help you break down and estimate the actual measurements of each point. And I think we're going to cover, estimating the actual measurements, and then I have a magic number estimating the shortest points, tactics, methods that I use to field judge. We're going to cover those in the next field judging episode. But I think it's important to get a good, solid gross score, not worry about the net so much until you go back and review and analyze your digiscoping photos. Craig, I think one thing I want to point out too is that, Craig and I live in Arizona, and we're fortunate to be around a lot of big bulls. But I want the listeners out there that are trying to learn how to field judge, and maybe their area doesn't have big bulls. They're in a state that, the biggest bull may be 330 inches or 300 inches. You can still learn how to field judge. What you need to do is study and analyze bulls that are killed in your area and know specifically what the average point length, the average mass, the average spread, because across the country, body sizes differ. Sometimes in a unit, a 6-point is a trophy, and there's, a lot of 4 and 5 points and young bulls, but they just don't get to be 6 points. So I want to make sure in this series of podcasts where we're talking about field judging elk, I don't want you guys to think we're just talking about, giant bulls over, 350 inches. I kind of want to cover it all. But some of these same characteristics and things that I'm talking about work on a 300 bull or a 400 bull.
Yeah, it's just scale. It's just slide the scale down. There's no, like you were just saying, we're blessed to live in Arizona, and then you go to the Indian reservations, and that's like a wildlife park. Just giant bulls and there, and just on the public side, we're blessed. And not all units in Arizona are the same either. Some units in Arizona, 350 is a tank. And I know in some states that, over the counter hunt, it, like you said, Jay, it might be a 6-point is just a hell of a bull. And it's nothing to be ashamed of, and inches doesn't measure your skill level as a hunter, but, we're just really, really blessed to be able to hunt some of the biggest animals, elk, in the world, or guide for them, and so that's why we, talk about this stuff.
Well, and I think it's, I think everybody that hunts classifies and categorizes their animals if they're hunting. Guys that are hunting in states where maybe the bulls are smaller, maybe a 350 bull is just a benchmark bull that, there's only, a couple a year get shot over 350. They're still, whether they're categorizing bulls as a, 260, a Pope and Young minimum type bull, a 280 or a 300, I think it's important wherever you hunt, if trying to be accurate and telling, your friends and your buddies and reliving your experiences, being accurate with your field judging is important. So I think we've covered enough today on this episode. I think we're going to dive into these future episodes. We'll dive into how to estimate the actual measurements per each point, and talking about point length, talking about main beams, talking about inside spread or mass and inside spread, and we'll go in specifically, and then We will also talk about, I have kind of a magic number formula that I use where I automatically plug in a spread, I automatically plug in main beams, and then all I do is add up points, and we'll dive into that in the next episode. Craig, I want to thank you for being on this morning and being with us, and look forward to diving into the next episode and getting into the details of estimating actual measurements. Good. Are you ready to get into the numbers today of field judging elk?
Let's go for it, man.
Okay. In a previous episode, we had talked about air judging and categorizing bulls, digiscoping for better references, and being able to break down bulls. Today we're going to talk about several methods of scoring that I use and that I've used over the years, and each year try and perfect even more, but they've become good tools for me to lean on. And like we talked about in the prior episode, if you go to jscottoutdoors.com, you go to the right-hand column kind of down, scroll down a ways, you will see field judging elk, and if you click on that, there's like 35 posts that I've done on field judging, and in those posts there's a lot of video and pictures of bulls where you can actually see the bull running around bugling, and then you'll get my estimated actual measurements, and then on some you'll get the estimated shortest points. I think, for people out there, I think the magic number or the estimated shortest points method works pretty darn good and pretty darn fast. The one thing I will caution you is when you're and in that method, you're basically adding up one side of the points and doubling them. The only thing I would tell you is if you misjudge that by doubling, you're compounding your room for error. So in my mind, the most accurate method of field judging is estimating actual measurements. So when we're talking about measurements, to rehearse, you actually remember that there's 4 categories of score in the Boone and Crockett scoring system. That's time, length, main beam, mass, and spread. Like we talked about in the prior episode, field judging elk and scoring elk, the most important aspect of a bull's score, percentage-wise, is time length. Second is main beam, third mass, and fourth is spread. So if someone tells you, oh man, that bull was wide, well, that's only part of the story. But if someone comes back and tells you, man, the points on that bull were unbelievable and he had incredible main beams, then that is definitely a bull that you want to go check out. Let's dive right into estimating actual measurements, Craig. In just a general topic, how do you become better at knowing what each point scores? I know how I do, and that's actually measuring antler, lots of antler, whether they be sheds or, other people's bulls, trying to know what, 15 inches is, what is 16 inches, what is 20 inches. Is that the same for you?
Yeah, it's actually seeing them, whether it be a shed, whether it be a set of antlers from the taxidermist or that I have, those are critical. Whether another thing is, like the averages of time length on whether it be your site or Boone and Crockett Club, getting a feel for what actually is, and then the other thing is you can never beat real life experience. Even if it's I encourage, and a lot of people, this is going to sound weird, but I encourage you, if you watch a bull fall that you maybe have seen, to go and touch it, congratulate the other hunter that took it, and just to get that experience. Because with the way draws are and everything, I think a lot of guys, to be accurate with their field judging, to be really accurate, you have to do it a lot. And you have to see that animal live, and you have to see that animal dead to actually get a sense of, okay, I thought he was 15 inches on his G3s, and he's actually 10 inches. So those touching horns helps. Looking at horns helps, looking at videos help, but actually the real life experience helps the most. And so any way you can get it, and I know that's kind of a weird way of doing it, but I know I'm like you. We celebrate. It sucks when somebody kills something and your hunter's not able to get it, or you're not able to kill it, or your family member or friend's not able to kill it. But we're all out there hunters, and if you go up and actually offer to give somebody a hand just so you get that, you humble yourselves, and just so you get that experience of actually touching that bull and seeing what he actually is, then do it.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
So
there's nothing like hands-on experience. Absolutely.
There's nothing that replaces it. That's one thing that I've known. I've noticed since I've started guiding, is my field judging skill level goes up because
you're forced to.
You're forced to, and also you're able to. With our outfitting deal, we're a medium-sized outfitter in Arizona. I would consider us, and so we have 4 or 5 guys that do hunts for us, and if 2 or 3 are successful, maybe my guy wasn't successful, I'm still able to put my hands on animals that I probably saw, and that elevates. It's just like with you and Dar, you're able to go put your hands on something that you actually saw. And the second best thing is having images or video and then putting your hands on that animal, know.
Well, and I think too, Craig, to a certain point, you have to kind of put yourself out there with your hunting partners or what have you and say, I think this bull scores this, and this is why I think so.
Yes.
If you don't ever kind of take a stand and force yourself to put a number on it and say, this is the number that I accurately, I'm putting my credibility saying this is what this animal scores, you never get better. What has made me better as well as guiding, and it's one thing for me to be inaccurate on a score of something that I shoot my own, but if someone hires me, I want to be as credible and as accurate as I possibly can. And so it has forced me to stand a line and say, I think that bull scores 320.
Yep.
Or I think that bull scores 380, and have the skill and backup to be able to say, this is why.
Exactly.
Now, am I right every time? Heck no.
Yeah.
I would say one of my biggest faults is I'm notoriously low. I'll give you an example. Last year, I actually was fortunate to accompany Jason Harrison of KUIU to just go along with them and take pictures and go with him on a hunt in Montana just for fun and shoot some video and, just hang out. And we looked at a lot of bulls, and Jason, we had an incredible hunt. And,
that's the Montana hunt, right?
Yeah, Montana hunt. There's a couple lessons here, one of which is I just came from Arizona, didn't really ask a lot of questions about Montana, jumped right into bulls bugling and, chaos and just an awesome hunt. I didn't know that a lot of the Montana bulls, their bodies are big. And so bulls that I was looking at that, Jason's like, what do you think that one scores? I'm like, 340. Realistically, it was probably a 355 bull. A bunch of those bulls were just big, kind of mammoth monarch-looking bodies, and I didn't realize it. And so one thing you need to know is wherever you're hunting, you kind of need to get a feel for body size of bulls. Are they bigger in this state or smaller in this state? So that's one thing. The other thing is Jason shot the bull, and it was, we might have saw one other bull that was bigger at a long distance, but this was one of the biggest bulls we saw. And he shot it, and we, had it on the ground, and we were taking pictures, and we were field dressing and skinning and the whole thing. And he's like, "What do you think it'd score?" So here, Craig, I have the bull on the ground. I don't have a tape on my pocket or anything like that, but I can actually touch the antlers, and I looked at it, and I added around, and I calculated, and I did this, that, and the other, and I said, I'll bet you, solid 350. Okay? Mm-hmm. So here the antler is in my hand.
Yeah.
The elk is laying there, and his bull ended up scoring 371 inches. Well, two things are at play. I have a tendency to always want to be under and never be over. That is just as much of a fault as being overscoring. I've done it on sheep. I've done it on, coos-steer. I've done it on things where I'm under. Granted, I have been over as well, but the couple of times that I have been overjudged and thought an animal was bigger, it has, quote unquote, scared me enough to want to be credible and want to be accurate. And, I tend to be under, even when they're on the ground, because I never like to have something be smaller than it actually is. I'd rather it be 20 inches bigger, like in this case, or 15 inches bigger. When Jason didn't score, but Jack and Cody and I scored it, and Jason was right there watching and taking part of the whole thing and watching us, and it scored 371. So I would rather say 355 and it be 370, but I think as a fault of my own, I can't be too far under, because there may be an opportunity to harvest an animal that the client really wants, and I tell them that it's 370. In reality, it's 390. So my quest is always to try and be as accurate as possible, hedging a little bit on the low side.
Yeah, I think that in general that's how I am, or I want to believe I am. I know for me that, anyway, going back to looking at how you get better is you have to, like you said there, you have to actually measure the antlers and see it live, and then that experience right there just told you, man, I'm historically under because of all the other experiences that I had, but would you say that from that maybe you'll be a little bit more aggressive?
Well, I can tell you that if I go to Montana again, I will have the video of the bull, the photos of the bull on the ground, the actual act that I actually scored the bull, and that will be in my brain forever, and I will be able to take, and how does that compare to Jason's bull? Okay, Jason's was 371. How does this bull? What does the body look like? And so I think each experience that we go through, I take them as a learning experience. Yeah, I get kicked in the gut a little bit, and the air gets knocked out of me because I'm like, man, I thought he was a 350, just over 350 solid bull, but he's a 370. Jay, you got to get better. And so, I try and take each experience and learn from it and try and get better each time. Craig, let's talk a little bit about the estimating the actual measurements method and how I like to use anatomical references to estimate several of the point lengths. If you start with the eye guards, Clay Goldman with Mogollon Taxidermy helped me quite a bit. Clay is my taxidermist located in Payson, Arizona. Mogollon Taxidermy, he does a phenomenal job. But I had him help me with some of these anatomical references to make sure that I was as accurate as possible. And when I'm looking at eye guards, from the tip of the nose to the burr, Clay measured a bunch of different bulls, and I've done the same thing. And typically, it's between 15 and 16 inches. So when you're trying to measure the first and second points, and sometimes the thirds you can place in there, you can use from a mature bull elk from the tip of his nose to where the burr, which is where the antler starts on the front part, so running, if you were to put a tape on the top of his nose and run it up to the burr, that's generally between 15 and 16 inches. Another interesting anatomical feature is from the tip of the nose to the beginning of the eye socket is typically 12 to 13 inches. So when a bull is turned broadside, a lot of times you will look and see how those eye guards, they don't parallel the nose, but you can a lot of times take that distance from the tip of the nose to the burr, being 15 to 16, and then extrapolate it up and measure those eye guards. One thing I will say about eye guards and points in general is short points that look short and points that look straight are short. Points that have a lot of belly and a lot of curve, you get extra inches. Anytime on the first, second, thirds, you've got a lot of belly and a lot of curvature, that ruler's going to stretch. So, you know, a lot of guys will look at a bull and see, you know, the eye guards point straight out. Watch those hard because straight points are usually short.
Now, do you think that you use the term stretch because on bulls with bellied or curved tines, specifically on the front end, because the perception of the distance that horn goes from a straight point basically ends at the curve where it starts curving, and a lot of guys
well, that's a great point, Craig. You need to make sure that the straight part of the eye guard is a good, 14 inches and then bellies up. I have seen bulls that curve right away, and it's a little bit deceiving. So you need a lot of straight, and then you need a lot of curve. And if those eye guards, the 1-2s, if they go out, say, a good 14, 15 inches, and then start curving, when they start curving, from the straight point to where it curves to the tip, I mean, you could pick up another 4, 5, 6 inches on the curve. A general rule of thumb is, looking anatomically at from the nose to the burr, 15, 16 inches, you want to make sure that now this is talking, Arizona, 350 plus type bulls. You want to make sure that you have, over 16-inch eye guards. But in general, you want to look for extra eye guards. Do the eye guards fork? If you get a 6 or 7 inch fork off an eye guard, that's 6 or 7 inches extra on your points measurements right there.
Mm-hmm.
Another anatomical reference that you can use is the distance from the top of the hump of an elk's back. So again, if he's standing broadside and straight up the length of his leg, right behind the leg in the crease, right where you would be trying to shoot with your broadhead, from the bottom of that crease, so the underbelly to the top of the hump, and again, I want to thank Clay for also giving me these measurements and re-solidifying what I think, and it's about 30 inches. So an interesting thing with that measurement of 30 inches is if you take that measurement, when you're trying to measure the fourth points, I like when fourth points are, 20 inches long. You can try and, when that bull's standing broadside, you can take that, when you're looking at that fourth point, take the distance from the tip to where it hits the base of the main beam, and put that in the hump. And if it is, 8 or 10 inches shy of the length of that hump, you're looking at a 20-inch fourth point.
And just to clarify with everybody listening and with you, the only way you're able to do these basically measurements from the body comparing to the horn is to have images or video, correct, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I've come up with over time, and I've used other resources that have come up with, and Dara and I have gone over, and Clay and I have gone over, and trial and error, and actually measuring anatomical features and keeping track of this. But yes, if you digiscoped your bull and you are able to go back and analytically break down on your computer screen or on your phone or whatever, you can use some of these anatomical features to help estimate.
Yes.
Now it's something, another tool to use.
Exactly.
It's not a like I said with the Montana bull, a giant body
throws your scale off.
The distance may be 33 inches, or a small body, it may be 28. So it's just something to use to calculate and try and get better. Another thing you can use with the 30 inches is when you're measuring your main beams. A 50-inch main beam typically is going to have from the burr to the fourth point. I don't know why. John McClendon actually is the first one that turned me on to this little fact. And from the tip of where the burr is, measuring up the main beam to where the fourth point starts, on a 350 plus bull, typically that measurement is always 30 inches. And you can take elk antlers and do it, and I've done a bunch of them, and it's dang sure from the burr to the fourth is almost always 30 inches. I don't know why, it just is. So you take that same measurement from the hump to the bottom of the belly, and you can extrapolate that and go, okay, am I dealing with a 50-inch main beam? Is this a 60-inch main beam, because I can take from the top of the back to the belly, and there's two of those, okay, that's a 60-inch main beam. Again, these are rough anatomical, using anatomical measurements to try and help you estimate score better.
That's awesome stuff.
Okay, and I'm looking at my notes here on an article that I wrote, and it says determining the 4 mash measurements per side is usually difficult. So I use a little rule of thumb. If the rack doesn't look heavy and has a thin appearance, I attribute 27 inches of mass per side, or 54 inches total. If a bull looks real heavy and solid, then I estimate about 30 inches of mass per side. Trying to determine mass, I will tell you, is difficult, and that comes from measuring a lot of bulls and looking in Boone and Crockett records and actually looking at total mass measurements. I will tell you a side note, like Unit 10 in my mind has less mass than Unit 9. I don't know why. Both units are fairly close. One of the things when I first started hunting in Unit 10, I had to realize that not a lot of bulls made that 30-inch mark for mass per side. And that is somewhat of an air judge. You look and you go, that bull's heavy. Okay, he may be more towards the 30-inch mark. If that bull looks light, I've seen 340, 350 bulls with 26 inches of mass, 52 inches per side, or 52 inches total. And that can throw off your field judging. So that is where knowing what your animals in your unit, what the average mass is that's where that can really play in and be important.
One of the biggest things that I've noticed just with one mass measurement, and I've just grown to learn it over the last, over the last 3 or 4 years, and really paid attention to it. Bulls at G1, their G1s and G2s come off almost at the exact same point, can blow up on their bottom circumference measurement. And it's very hard to notice that or to be aware of it. But if you see a bull that is G1 and G2 come out from almost the same point, more than likely his first mass measurement is going to be a lot bigger than average.
Okay, and so Craig, what you're specifically talking about there is a great point. And, part of becoming a great field judger is you really need to understand the scoring of an elk. So real fast, I'm going to go through that, and then I'm going to come back to your point of webbing. And webbing is huge with mass. And you bring up a good point. Anytime you have your first and second points that are close together, you a lot of times will have like an extra, 2.5, 3 inches of webbing. But I guess I got ahead of myself. When you're estimating actual measurements, you're estimating basically your point length, which usually is your G1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on a typical 6x6 bull. Then you're estimating the main beam length, which is from the burr to the tip of the elk antler, then the mass, and then the width. So your spread, and that gives you your measurements for an elk antler. More importantly, you need to actually look at the Boone and Crockett score sheet and see where they're taking the actual measurements. One thing that people need to understand, and I see this mistake made a lot, is people take your first circumference measurement at the burr of the elk antler, and that is not correct. What Craig is talking about is you always take the mass measurements between the 1-2, the 2-3, the 3-4, and the 4-5.
And you only get 4, no matter if he's a 6, 7, or 8, 9, or 10 point.
Right, and I've seen people, shoot a 7x7 and give themselves 5 mass measurements a side. You only get 4 per side, even if he's a 7, 8, or 9 point. So, going back to your point of webbing, what Craig is talking about is it's very deceiving, but if you ever get to look at an elk real close, and if his G1 and G2, which is where you take your first circumference measurement, if those points are close together, a lot of times what you're going to have is what's called webbing. And that webbing is where the first point hits the main beam and it rolls around into the second point. If they're close enough together, that is going to be almost, it's hard to describe. It's going to be, it's actually going to make the main beam swell. So you're not actually measuring like you would around the main beam. Because they're so close together, you get a swelling or a webbing there. And a lot of times, you can go from having a 9-inch a G1 measurement to having a 11-inch G1 measurement just because of the webbing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and you can't. And the reason why I pointed that out is because typically on the other mass measurements, and I've done this, you can see the mass there a lot of times because it's exposed on the curve. You can see it. And I've been surprised on bulls. I got a bull that I found sheds of that's 393, with a 40-inch inside spread credit. And that bull has huge mass in the back. He reminds me of the bull that somebody found the pickup head of in Unit 10, the club bull that has the club. He's a lot like that bull. But the one thing he doesn't have, and I believe he's only got 28 inches of mass. And if you look at him, he's actually more massive than the bull than the club bull. If you look at him, you think the bull's going to have over 30 inches of mass, but his G1 and G2s are separated, and he loses a couple inches there. Whereas I've seen bulls, or my Utah bull, his eye guards were super close together, and I want to say his first mass circumference was 10 and a half. And, I didn't account for that. And that's, we're talking about finer details here that, you're only going to see if you actually have time and you're digiscoping and you're really taking, you're not going to really look at that if you're air judging something. But if you're really trying to nail down a score, that's something to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And mass can throw a lot of things off, but if you use, the 20, the 26, the 25, 26, the 27, 28, and the 30-inch mass measurement, usually you can get pretty darn close, and we'll get into that when I start talking about my little formula, the magic number, the estimating the shortest points. But yeah, any one of these characteristics, if you have abnormal mass, abnormal point length, abnormal main beam, or abnormal spread, it can jump your score up.
Mm-hmm.
You want to try and get an eye for what is, average 350 bull, what is an average 320 bull, what is an average 400 bull. And I think that's where my chart of, average measurements is something that you could even keep on your phone when you're out in the field. And, if you're looking at a bull and he's got, 16-inch points, every point is 16 inches, you're probably looking at, just in general, you're probably looking at a 360 type of bull.
Yeah.
If he's got 13-inch points, you're probably looking at a 300 bull. If every point on him's, 20 inches, right there, just in point length alone, you're looking at 200 inches, 100 per side, because you've got, your G1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is 20 inches. That's 100 inches right there on that side. You're probably looking at a 400-inch bull.
Yeah.
Just to go over it again, point length in my mind is number one. You got to have long points. When you're, let's talk about third points now. Third points in my mind are ones you when you're looking at a bull, I look at the backs, I look at the main beam, but thirds are something that can always make or break your score, because a lot of times you'll have a bull that has great first, seconds, fourths, fifths, good beams, and the thirds are short. You got to watch those thirds. If you've got a bull with long thirds, he's probably going to be a bull that surprises you score-wise. What you want to look for in those thirds is a lot of belly and a lot of curve. If you're looking at them head on, you want them to go out and then curve back in. And, I've seen some bulls with, 25-inch third points. I killed one, the biggest bull I've ever killed with my bow, scored 406, and he had 25-inch third points. Mm-hmm. Thirds can a lot of times make or break a bull. If you're just looking at an average, point length bull, if you've got, big thirds, that's going to jump your score up. But you've got to watch the thirds, because a lot of times you'll have everything but short thirds.
I've noticed, and this is just something I was just thinking about, just as we were talking about this with bulls with big thirds, is a lot of times when I see bull, and I think of big thirds to me are really big thirds are over 20. Above average thirds are definitely are over 15 to me. But when I think of bulls that have big thirds, like we're talking 20 plus, those bulls with just those giant thirds, it seems like to me, and this is just throwing this out there, that they usually have pretty solid G1s and G2s for whatever reason. Do you notice that?
I agree. If a bull has long thirds, typically their 1, 2, 3s are all pretty good and pretty long. I've seen bulls with, pretty good fronts but short thirds, but in general, you make a good point. If a bull's got big long thirds, he typically is good all the way 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
and personally, I like big bulls with big backs. I like big fourth and fifth points. That's what I like. But some of the best scoring bulls are some that are just, their 1, 2, 3s are really big and long, and a lot of people look at the backs, but I've got a bull that's got 9-inch fifths, but like he's got 25-inch thirds and 22, 23-inch 1-2s. And he scores 406. He was droughted. It was a drought bull that had I want to say 15-inch fourths and 9-inch fifths, but he's all fronts. He actually has an extra eye guard too.
I've done some stupid things with bulls with big fronts. I have a tendency to severely underjudge them, and I'm talking about when I get a bull that I consider is kind of lopsided, where you're talking with 5 to 10-inch fifths, and maybe 16-inch sword tying, but then his fronts are 20 and maybe 20 or 25 on his thirds. And I have a tendency to, and I've learned this, and I've really, especially when I was younger, I gravitated, because I like back ends too, and width, and I gravitate toward that, and I tend to, if I'm completely real here, I tend to overjudge that and look at that. And I think a lot of people look at what they want to look at or what they like, and then they don't look at for me, when I'm looking at, I've learned that I have to look, if I see a bull with big fronts, I really have to look him over, because a lot of times I will look over a bull like that, and he may just have, he could be 25, 25, and 25, and then have 16 and 10, and that's a big bull,
Yeah, and I think, Craig, you make a great point. I think, when I'm making my first impressions and looking at a bull, I'm looking for weaknesses. But I'm also, on the other hand, I'm looking for something that's abnormal, and it's like, wow, he's got huge fronts, but he peters out in the back. Well, you have to kind of add all that in together, because it's just as if, he has big backs and short fronts. You take the weaknesses, but you also look at, he's got some abnormal greatness up front. That can weigh in just as much as having big giant backs.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then in Arizona, when you throw in, you and I, we've been talking about a couple bulls, and we've shared pictures of the same bull that's got giant fronts and weak backs, and we're not going to mention any places where he's at, but those are the type of bulls, in my mind, on a good year like this year, they can really round out and gain some significant inches. If their back catches up, or even just becomes average, just becomes a 350 type bull back in, if he's got abnormally large fronts, those are
you gotta watch those bulls with big fronts, because on a year like this where you've got optimum feed conditions, the backs are usually going to finish up. Sometimes genetically they just don't have big backs, but that one bull you're talking about in particular, you got to watch a bull like that, because on a good year like this, he could finish out his back end and be a true giant.
Yes.
I think everybody has their own different bulls that they like, but to be a good high-scoring bull, you got to have long points. We've talked about that a million times, but I think it's important to note you have to have long points and a long main beam. When I'm using an anatomical reference to judge the main beam, okay, if from the top of the hump that we've talked about on a bull's shoulder to his hoof, and Clay has really helped me out to verify my measurements, but 58 to 60 inches, okay?
Okay.
So when a bull's head is down feeding, I'm going to read this off my notes here. I determine whether the main beam is higher or lower than the hump on his back above his shoulder. The distance from the top of his shoulder, hump down, his front leg to the hoof is generally 58 to 60 inches, depending on the maturity of the bull. If the tip of the main beam comes to the top of the hump, then the beam is probably around 50 inches. Now, what you have to remember is that distance of, 12 to or 15 to 16 inches from the tip of the nose to the burr. So picture the bull's head is down. Obviously, you have to add that measurement in because he's not setting his actual burr of his antler on the ground. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. If the tip of the main beam comes to the top of the hump, then the beam is probably around 50 inches. If it's shorter or longer than the hump of the back, I add or subtract accordingly. Now that is just a general rule of thumb. I also use my chart when I've kind of air judged and categorized the bull. I can use my chart here for main beams, which you guys can find on my website. But, for a 340 to 350 bull, he's going to have a 38-inch inside spread, a 50-inch main beam, 29 inches of mass, 15-inch point lengths. Total point length per side, 75 inches, puts him at a 345, 346 type of bull. Okay? Main beams, when we're talking about main beams, that is the second most important characteristics of a bull scoring high. So you've got long points, but main beams is number 2. One of the things you need to look at is the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. If your main beam looks really straight, he's going to be a short main beam. If his beams from his 4th point going back to his 5th, if they dip way down, or if they dip down and then curve back up, if you see a lot of curvature on the main beam, it's going to be longer than you think. I think you can measure a lot of antlers and get kind of a feel for a 50 or 52-inch main beam, and then when you're field judging in the field, you'll be able to say, oh, that's a 55, or oh, that's a 48. But a straight-looking main beam, just like a straight-looking point, is short. So anytime you see a short or a straight-looking 4th, short-looking 3rd, or straight-looking 3rd, it's going to be a short point. Same with the main beam.
Gotcha. I'm main beams to me, and this is just me personally, I don't know about you, but to me they're the hardest measurement to get. As far as just because, and this is me personally, based on my experiences, is I use the mass you're talking about as far as 25, 27, 28, 30. Obviously, you can miss a little bit there and not hurt too much of your score. The time length to me, because you have basically you have, if it's a 6 point, you have 5 on each side to kind of compare. You know what I mean? The main beam to me, for me personally, is what either, if the bull's got a big body, if he's got a small body, if he's got curve, if he bellows out, to me is where I screw up the most. That's just me personally. And so I really scrutinize my main beam lengths, and I really want to look at, like you're saying, I was just looking at some of your images. I was looking at the bull, the club bull that's was posted June 29th, 2012, Field Judging Elk and Scoring Elk, Antlers 3.
The G5 bull.
Yeah, the G5 bull, sorry. You got a picture of him with his head down, and I used that real quick, and I came up with a 56-inch main beam. You guys have it here in your estimated actual measurement. It's 58, that's pretty accurate, 56 to 58. We're not talking, to me, I think when I listen to this back and when I look at any field judging stuff, it's kind of giving a barometer for guys or a scale. Okay, what's accurate? How far off is still good? as far as field judging. And I think within the main beams, if you can get within 2 inches, that's pretty dang accurate.
Yeah, and I think another important thing is, on these big bulls, if you're basically just using the benchmark of 50, anything over that is a bonus. Yes, you may end up scoring the bull low, but don't say it's 58 if you really think it's 53 or
how hard is it, Jay, to really? I've found one shed antler that's 60. I've seen and held a few bulls that are 60-inch main beams, but those are rare.
Okay, so let's talk about that. You hear the guy say, well, when he bugled, he tilted his head back and the tip of his main beam hit his butt. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, no way.
Yeah.
Can't happen. Where it hits is like in their paunch, above the front of their back leg. The no-go zone where you do not want to hit an elk, a gut shot, that's where it's going to scratch. But anybody that tells you that the main beam goes past their butt or scratches their tail, no, doesn't happen.
I think the longest bull I've seen on video that looked the longest was Dan Agnew's bull from, I don't know, San Carlos or White Mountain.
Yeah, and those were long. That was a beautiful.
Yeah, those were like,
I want to say he had like 64.
Yeah, I got a bull that's 63. I got shed horns, one side out that's 63, and it is abnormally long. I mean, it's just ridiculous, and you just don't see those.
And I will tell you that I don't care if it's a 430-inch bull, the number 60 on estimating beams never comes out of my mouth, ever.
Yeah.
I'm
scared to go 50. I go 55.
Yeah, so that's a good rule of thumb that, if it's a super long-looking main beam, use 55, and if it's a couple inches longer, great. But in all the elk antlers that I've scored, very rarely do they ever get 60 inches, and quite honestly, they very rarely get over 56.
Uh-huh.
It's so, using on your high end of 55, that's a pretty good, that will keep you in the ballpark, and if they end up being a little bit longer, so be it. So now that we've, taken the myth of, them scratching their butt. Now keep in mind, I am not saying that an elk cannot do it. They can tilt their head way, way back, not in the bugling position, but way back, and, tilt their body around and scratch their butt. They can absolutely do it. But in the bugling pose, when you hear, he was bugling and he was broadside and he's scratching his butt, it ain't happening.
Yeah, no, you hear that a lot. That's the giant fish story.
Yeah, I think for me, one hard part is spread. I think, you take Michael Park's 435-inch bull that, he shot in 2009 with me. What would you just guess his width is?
When I look at him, I would have probably guessed him at 40, but I want to say he's probably, 37?
He's 34.5 inches wide. So it's super, super deceiving. And, the biggest bull I've ever killed is 45 inches wide, and to me that's super wide. Now, I know there's bulls that are 50 inches wide, but the thing that I can tell people out there is, generally 350 bulls in Arizona are gonna be in that, I'm gonna say in that 36 to 40 range.
Yeah. Yep.
To me, if a bull, I shouldn't say I never.
And we're talking inside the crest.
Inside spread.
That's
which
where
is
you get the score from, not the outside. Or
right. Inside spread is generally or between the fourth point. So say between the fourth or between the fourth and fifth, that's generally where you get your spread credit. And the inside spread credit is the only thing that matters in the Boone and Crockett scoring system. Anatomically, if a bull is looking at you, I'm going to read off my notes. The last measurement to estimate is inside spread, which is the widest point from the inside of one beam to the inside of the other, I often use two anatomical references. First, the distance from ear tip to ear tip, which is generally 21 to 22 inches, and second, the actual ear length itself, which is 7.5 inches. The only way to really estimate the inside spread of a bull elk is for him to be facing you. When he's facing you, you look at the width of his ears. If you can add one ear length to each side, then you have that should put you at a 37-inch spread. So you've got 22 inches of his ear width, 7.5 on each side is 15. That equals 37 inches. So if you can add an ear length and a half, then the inside spread measures 44.5 inches. Mm-hmm. Like I said, keep in mind that very few bulls are wider than 45 inches.
Yeah.
With that being said, we always see the anomaly bull that's 51 inches wide or some crazy thing, and those are individual cases that you have to take on a case by case basis.
That's a freak. That bull that I filmed that my cousin missed, that Godzilla bull, that would have been 480, that ended up being 464 and was killed the next year. That bull, I believe he was 45 or 47 inches wide, and that's the widest bull. I've seen a couple bulls that are close, but I can count on one hand, and that's since I was living in Arizona, and I will say really, really hunting hard since I was about 18 or 19. I'm 35 now. I can count on one hand how many bulls that I thought were 45 inches. When I was younger, I would have probably called them 50, just out of not knowing. But that bull was, he was 464 inches, and that's how wide he was. I rarely give a bull over 40 inches inside score credit, and generally it's 35 to 37, and that's just what I see a lot of. So.
Yeah, and I'm with you 100%. I'm the same way. Very rarely do I give a bull over 40. And, keep in mind, you got a bull like Michael Parks that, like I said, 435, and he's got a 34.5-inch spread, but he's got point length out the wazoo, so...
Hey, I battle this subject every time my wife gets an elk tack, because all she cares about is spread, as long as it's got some long beams. And so it's a battle when somebody sees, it's like the 30-inch mule deer. Remember when everybody, and it's totally up to yourself, but remember when that's what big buck contests were based on, was width.
Sure.
It was width,
And I'm going to say that, everybody has different things that they like. Some people like 6x6, some people like 7x7,
Yeah.
some people like, abnormal points, so everybody's got their own. But when we're specifically talking about
score,
trying to be accurate in field judging and score, you have to realize that spread is nothing in the arena of percentage. Tine length is number 1, main beam is 2, mass is 3, and spread is very last. When I'm doing the estimated actual measurements, I actually try and measure up, and that's going usually off of photos and video. I try and score every point. So I'm going to start on the left side. I'm going to do the G1, G2, G3, G4, G5. I'm going to estimate the main beam length. I'm going to estimate the mass, and then I'm going to add up my score. So I'm basically taking every single measurement and adding it up, trying to get the most accurate gross score that I can.
Mm-hmm.
There's another method that I use, and that's what I call plugging in the magic number, or estimating the shortest points. And that is something that I do a lot of times in just trying to get a quick measurement. And I'm going to read off my notes here. There's a great shortcut for field judging bulls where I use anatomical reference, but instead of trying to estimate each measurement individually, I use a magic number for the main beam length, the mass, and the inside spread. and then I compare the length of the points from one side to the other, estimating the shortest points. This method is not quite as exact as estimating each measurement, but it gets you very close, much easier, and much faster. First, I start with the magic number of 200. For a mature, typical bull elk, that scores around 350 inches. His main beam is usually around 50 inches per side. So that's 100 inches. His mass usually equals 30 inches per side, which is 60 inches. And inside spread is usually around 40 inches. So that's 100 plus 60 plus 40, that equals 200. Now I will stop here and we've already talked that 30 inches of mass is quite a bit, and we've already talked that 40 inches is, a lot of bulls are under that. I'm going to come back to that. Next, I estimate the length of the shortest point for each antler and double it, and then add them up. Be careful with these estimates, because whenever you double a measurement, it can make your score go up or down dramatically. Meaning, if you say it's 13 inches and you double it to give it 26, and it's actually 15, it can be 30. You're off right there on just that point alone by 4 inches. Okay, do your best not to overestimate your shortest points. Now add the total length of points to the magic number 200 to get the gross score. Finally, go back to the main beam, mass, and inside spread. Is the main beam really 50 or is it 53? Add or subtract accordingly. Is the mass heavy or light? How does it compare to 30 inches per side? Add or subtract accordingly. Is the bull really 40 inches or is he 36? Add or subtract accordingly. If you think those measurements deviate from the magic number, just add or subtract. So when I'm looking at a 350, 360 type of, when I've already air judged and categorized this bull, the first thing I do is add up his 5 points and double it. Add it to my magic number, and I've got my score. So, for instance, if I look at a bull and he's got 16, 18, 20, 20, and 17, that's 91, doubled is 182. I add the 182 to my 200, and I'm looking at a 382 bull. Now, if I look at that bull and say, but his main beams are a little longer than 50, so I'm going to add 2 more inches per side, so I go 2 and 2, that's 4. The bull automatically goes to 386. I get to the mass and go, well, he's not actually 30, so I'm going to subtract. He's only 29 per side. I'll subtract 2 off my score. If the spread is not 40, he says only 36, I subtract 4, and that gets me to my score of 384 gross. Does that make sense to you, Craig?
That absolutely makes sense.
And I use the magic number scoring system a lot when I'm just quickly trying to say, okay, look at the G1s, which one's shortest? Okay, 16. Okay, look at his G2s, which one's shortest? Okay, 17. And then when you add up the shortest points, you are going to get pretty darn close to what the bull's score is, and that's the quickest way to accurately add up a bull.
Yep, I agree.
I think it's important to talk about a couple of these charts here where, let me look here. I think it's important to talk about a couple of these field judging tips in this episode. Number 1, point length is the single most important ingredient for a bull to score high. Next is main beam. It is rare to have a high-scoring bull without long points and beams. We've gone over that. Number 2, on a typical 7x7, the point measurement is going to go up dramatically. For instance, a typical 7x7 will usually have 6 points that measure from 4 to 20 inches, which can add 8 to 40 inches to the bull's total gross score. We've talked about that. Any extra points that you add into your point total make your score go up dramatically, especially if you have a 4 and a 4 on each side. That's 8 extra inches. If each extra is 10 inches, that's 20 extra points. So you could be looking at a bull that looks like a 350 mainframe bull, and he's 370 because he's got 2 extra 10-inch points.
Yep.
Another thing to note, like Craig says, on a 7x7, you don't receive any extra mass measurements. The only mass measurements are between the first second, second third, third fourth, and fourth fifth. And that measurement is the smallest circumference measurement in that area. So between the first and second, the smallest area, second, third, the smallest area. I see guys score and they go to the biggest. You go to the smallest. Look for any weaknesses or broken missing points, as they can affect the score dramatically. We didn't talk about broken points, but one of the things when I'm air judging and my first impressions is I'm looking for weaknesses. I'm looking for broken points. Because if you have a broken third that's broken at the main beam, and the other side is 18 inches, well, you're going to lose 18 whole inches on that other side. So broken points, abnormal extra points are huge, but broken points are just as huge on the downside.
And we get a lot of them in Arizona. Ton of broken points, especially on the early rifle and on the last week of the archery.
It seems on the weaker antler growth years, the antler, because it's bone, can be brittle and they break hard. But I've also seen on great antler growth years where you have high intense rutting, you get a lot of fighting, and those antlers inevitably are just going to break. So you've got to watch for broken points, and that's another good thing when you call a bull in and you're going through your first impressions. If you can train yourself to look for weaknesses, is he missing a fifth? Is he missing a third? Is he broken somewhere? That will either help you. That will help you determine whether he's a shooter or not a shooter. Most of the time, broken point bulls are not bulls that you want to shoot. I will say the biggest bull I ever killed has a 12-inch broken point. And when I first called him in, I actually passed on him because I immediately saw the broken point. So it put me into the mindset of he's broken, he's broken, he's broken. I don't want to shoot him. And it made me not look at all the rest of his points. My wife happened to be videoing the bull as he walked by, and I said, let me look at that video again. And then I realized my first impression shut me off because it was a broken point, because I didn't want to shoot a broken bull. But then I realized every other point's a giant. He's 7x7 with the broken G6. He's still a shooter. So, you have to. Did
your wife tell you were nuts? She had to make the call on that bull for you.
She tells me I'm nuts a lot. So, okay. Use anatomical references to judge measurements. Count the number of points on each side, because if something looks odd, it usually is. The main beam length from burr to fourth point is usually around 30 inches, so compare that length of the main beam from the fourth point to the tip of the main beam. If it looks about half as long, then the length is closer to 45 inches. If it looks equally as long, then it might be pushing 60 inches. Number 7, main beams are rarely 60 inches or more. Inside spread are rarely over 45, and mass is rarely over 32. Number 8, try to err on the short side when estimating measurements. It's real easy to think they're longer than they are, and when you start, given an 18-inch G1 and it's really 15, and you extrapolate that number, 2, 3, 4, 5 up the side, and you're off on the first one, you can get way off quick. Look for good spacing between the points. I think this one is huge. When you're looking at the main beam, a bull, if his points are all real compact and tight together on the actual spacing of the main beam, that's a good indication that your beam is going to be short. I think it's important to look for those bulls that have a good distance between their second and their third and their fourth, and their fourth and their fifth, because and especially those bulls that have a good distance between third and fourth, and fourth and fifth. If you can get good distance on those two measurements, you're typically going to have a lot longer main beam. If points look close together, the beams are probably not as long as you think. That's the end of number 9 and number 10. If a beam or point looks straight, then it will be shorter than you think. Look for lots of belly or curve in the points and the main beam. Curve means greater length. I think we talked about that, but going back, anytime a bull's looking at you and it goes, say as thirds, seconds or thirds, they go out and then they go up, you're going to be looking at a long point. So
I think curves too, as well as on the main beams. When those bulls, I think bulls have longer main beams than what you think on bulls that flare out excessively in the back, where it's a curve, but it's not a curve against your kind of the parallel lines of how you see the beam structure. But if you look at a bull from the front and he's got a lot of flare out in the back, you guys have a picture of a bull, and I'm just scrolling through the website here. I think Dar videoed this bull in water. Tim Allen's bull. That bull, well, he kind of curves in, and you don't necessarily see, especially on his left side, it's a straight beam, but the beam kind of bellies in, versus just staying straight. So I think that's another thing to look at with beams is what is their horn structure when you look at them head on? Do they just go straight back, or do they curl in, or do they curl out? Versus just from the side angle, looking at the curvature is how it curves there as well. So
yeah, I think that's a great point. If any abnormality, if it curves out, if it curves in, if it curves down, if it curves up, you're going to add distance. You're going to add length. If it just is a real pretty looking beam that just goes back, it's probably not as long as you think. But in points or in the main beam, anything that's abnormal, that's bending out, bending down, bending up, a lot of times you're going to get longer. Now, I will say, after the fifth points, when a beam tips up, I've found those tipped up beams to be shorter than bulls that tip way down. So sometimes you've got to watch that bend up, because it can be deceiving to me. Bending up in the back, to me, sometimes is shorter than bending either normal or down. Down is best, and down and out is best. You get a lot of flare, and that's where you get inches. So, Craig, do you think there's anything there that we did not cover? We could go on and on. I think extra points, non-typical bulls, extra thirds, extra fourths, split brow tines. Those are all things to be looking for to add inches to your score.
I think we pretty much covered it. I think the thing is that I always catch myself, and for you guys that are listening, is what system are you going to use, and when are you going to be able to use it? Just speaking out loud for myself is, if you want to be as field judge as accurate as possible, the best way is to be able to video and digiscope a bull, see him in the field and out of the field. Trail pictures are awesome, but I think there's something to seeing the bull live as well. It kind of completes a 360, if you will, perspective of that entire animal. A lot of situations that you're going to be in as far as hunting type situations, especially if you're archery hunting, and you haven't located the bull that you want to hunt, hand-to-hand type, for lack of better terms, combat, so to speak, you're going to have to air judge a bull and make a split-second decision, and that's going to take some experience. And there's always those bulls that just absolutely floor you, but count the number of points real quick. Look at width, look at main beam length, really, really look at, like you were saying, Jay, and stressing, really look at tine length. Don't just get caught up on the width, and you really have to look at tine length right away. So
yeah, and with time length being the number one most important thing in a high scoring bull, it's everything. And so you're missing points. That's a huge deduct. You got to really watch that. I will say the biggest bulls I've ever seen, most of the time they're pretty impressive and wowing. Handfuls of bulls that I've shot over 400 or seen or guided over 400. Most of the time, from the initial impression and look, they look giant. They look huge. There's everything about them is big. So just the air judge and first impressions is huge, but it's kind of like a big brown trout. I mean, the big ones look big. The big elk look big. If you look at him and go, well, he's probably not a giant.
Yeah.
You probably need to keep looking, depending on what tag you have or what have you. But speaking, Arizona, where the biggest of big, if you're going after a giant, they've got to look huge. There can't be any angle. I've never seen a 400 bull that's got an angle that you're like, I don't think he's that big. They all look big at every angle. Every 400-inch bull looks giant.
Yeah, no, and that's another thing too, is when you're judging off pictures, if you got a camera picture or if you got a digital picture, don't get focused on just the pictures where you look big, or your marketing pictures, or the pictures you're going to share with all your buddies and say, I found a big one. You need to really analyze every angle, rear, front, side, and quarter.
I think that's a great point. I think, we get caught up in, getting the best angle and sending that to your buddies. Send the worst angle to your buddies first.
Yes.
Then send the best angles. Now, I will talk a little bit about photos and video. Dara and I feel very strongly that video is way better than photos.
Yes.
Photos can be very deceiving. Video catches all angles, catches movement, brings in anatomical features, brings in body size. Video is king because you see all the different flares and angles, and pictures can be super deceiving. So learn to judge off of photos and learn to judge off of video, and know that there's a difference.
Yeah, big time. I would agree with that 100%. That you can pull frames off of any animal and make him look bigger than what he is, but if you get that perspective, that video, those weak spots will show up.
Yeah. Craig, I want to thank you for being on and going through this and the other episode on field judging elk. We're going to be doing some field judging sheep and coos deer and mule deer, and I've actually already recorded a field judging antelope episode with you and your partner Lee Murphy with Exclusive Pursuits Outfitters. And I want to let the listeners know, if they have any questions at all, feel free to email me at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. And if you want to send me photos, all summer long, I get people emailing me trail camera photos, asking me what they think bulls score. I'm happy to give you my estimate. So feel free to do that. Want to encourage you guys to try and up your game and trying to learn as much as you can about field judging, whatever animal you're hunting. And to try and push yourself and stretch yourself to become to me, field judging is becoming a better hunter. I believe that field judging is a skill just as much as you should go work out and, do sit-ups and push-ups. You should be working on your field judging. You can do a lot of field judging by I have files and files and files on my computer where I save photos of bulls and, put official scores, and if it's not an official score, put the the score that the person's saying, and I process all of that and try and get where I can categorize bulls better. And I hope that some of the things we talked about in these episodes on field judging elk help you. And Craig, do you have anything to add?
No, man. I just would stress about the digiscoping stuff, that everybody, my dad's even got a smartphone, so I don't want an excuse of why those cameras in the smartphones have the memory, have the capability. Get yourself,
with that outdoors
adapter, get yourself an adapter, and even if it's a minute or two, take the time. And another thing too, just off field judging with that, is you're able to keep track of that bull as well and go back and say, yeah, that is him. He does have a kicker off of his here, because your memory will deceive you, but when you can reflect back on video and images and reassure yourself that he's as big as what you thought he was, it makes it a lot easier to go back in there time and time again and hunt him. So
yeah, and you also made a good point earlier about keeping track of bulls, and if another hunter kills them, hey, contact the hunter, say, hey, a couple months after the season, can I come by and look at the rack in your garage? I had the fortune of spending some time with this bull, and I have the measurements that I've estimated. I'm just curious what each point, and go score that bull and put your hands on it.
And give him a little video too. A lot of times that I know Jay and I get contacted a lot. A lot of times guys give him a little video. Let's build some camaraderie out of this. It's not this Jay and I. It's not all about being selfish and what you kill. You learn that through guiding. That just be a sportsman about it. So
yeah. Well, buddy, I appreciate you being on, and I appreciate the great content that you provide on orkhunt.com, and we're a couple months away now from go time, elk season, and 60 days away, and it's going to be an exciting year in Arizona, and I'm looking forward to it. So, wish you the best, and appreciate all the help you give here on the J. Scott Outdoors podcast, and until the next time I talk to you, buddy, God bless you, okay?
You too, bud. It was fun.